Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey guys, thank you for joining us for another exciting episode of YOMO. This is the Year of Magical Learning podcast. Today we're doing Reflection 225, and this is part two of three in the second installment of the book, The Ultimate Jim Rohn Library by Jim Rohn.
Yeah, well, this is because of this is your fault, by the way.
My fault.
Yeah, so this is around the time of the whole Your Magical Learning journey where you were like, well, I think we were in a conversation one night and I was like, because I officially started to write multiple reflections on, for things that I learned on different books. I mentioned one night I limited myself from doing that for the first like maybe 100 and some books, 120 books or whatever. And then I don't know, we got to talking one night. You're like, well, if you have more thoughts about some of those, then write those. And I was like, crap. I mean, this is one of those books that's why you're seeing part two and part three, so far away from part one, because I did have more thoughts about, Jim Rohn's lessons that I learned from him. And I wanted to share it with everybody in this journey. So that's why you are seeing this now.
The Year of Magical Learning isn't about the books.
Right. Yeah. So this particular lesson is about the rock pile. And for anybody that's read my book, I imagine you'll probably have already heard the story because I did touch on it a little bit in the book itself. However, I thought it was worthwhile to carve out its own reflection just because it was an important learning in my life. So there's a story about a man who took a rock pile and in 2 years turned it into a fabulous garden. And people came from everywhere to see it. One day, a man came by and saw the garden and thought it was fabulous, but he wanted to make sure that the gardener didn't take all the credit. So the man toured the garden to have a chance to meet with the gardener. Eventually, he found the gardener, shook his hand, and said, "Mr. Gardener, you and the good Lord have made this beautiful garden." The gardener immediately understood his message and the point of why he made sure to say, "The good Lord and you together have made this garden." And he replied, "That's true. I think that's definitely true. If it's not for the sunshine and the rain and the miracles of the seed and the soil and all the seasons, there would be no garden at all, without a doubt." And then he continued, "But you should have seen this place a couple years ago when God had it all to himself." And that is the story of the rock pile. And when I heard that in this audiobook from Jim is known for being a success philosopher on things like business and motivator around how to do a lot of that other stuff, right? And really how to break through in your professional career and things like that. I mean, and in your personal life, but it's really more about like success and things like that, And it was actually really, really this was the very end. Literally, I think it was like the last like 10 or 15 minutes of the whole audiobook experience with him. And he said, "I'm not one for God, really, or talking about God, but I'd be remiss if I didn't bring it up a little bit here in terms of the impact that God plays in your life." And that was the story that he told. And for me, as you know, you've followed along with my story, you've read the book, right? So you understand a little bit of where this reflection is going to come from. But this made me reflect a little bit on my relationship with God myself. And before my daughter, I think it's safe to say that I didn't have a relationship with God. And I don't mean that in like I'm anti-God or some atheist or whatever else. I just didn't have a relationship with God. I went to a Catholic grade school, Catholic high school. I came from a very devout Catholic family. I studied every single day. We had a religion class every day of my life growing up. Like, it's not that I don't know the concepts of religion and the concepts of Jesus and the concepts of God. I know it very, very well. I just didn't have a relationship with God. I didn't know what God was other than this like Wizard of Oz kind of figure, that was like just there, all-encompassing God. Like God created it all, and that was it. For most of my life, use that as my baseline. And then the rest of it, in my opinion, was all on me. It was a one-person show. I was like, God exists. I don't know what God's role is in this world, but I know that God exists, and the rest of it's all on me to figure out what to do. And that was how I approached most of my life before my daughter. Not most of my life, my whole life. I just didn't have a relationship. And then after Amelia passed away, my mind was just flooded with a lot of questions, like, changed everything. All the stuff that I thought that I knew went right out the window, and I was searching for a lot of answers, and I felt more alone than I've ever felt in my entire life. Not just alone, but literally isolated because the pandemic as well was going on, right? So not only was I metaphorically alone and lost, even my own wife and I, we were in our own little worlds. We were physically in each other's presence, but we were mentally in totally different places at all times. And for me, it was during that time that I started writing to Amelia every single day. And thank God that I did that, because we've talked about this, like the documenting and the journey and being able to remember the stuff. And now I don't know what I would have done if I didn't do this stuff. But when I think back to the whole rock pile conversation and God, it was around this time. It helped me initially those first few months to work through a lot of those questions, a lot of those thoughts that I was having the whole entire time of, unanswered figuring out life again, I guess, kind of stuff. And when I finally found my footing again in life, I started to focus a little bit on the future again, and focus a little bit on, let my mind wander a little bit about, I don't know, my imagination coming back. I was still writing at the same time. And then all of a sudden, when I was writing, I realized I wasn't writing alone anymore. Like every single day, when I was finished writing to Amelia, I just kept writing about topics that had nothing to do with pain and suffering and questioning and all the other stuff. It was just random topics that my mind was, engaged in. And as I was continuing to write, I discovered I wasn't doing that alone. Yes, I was writing with Amelia, and yes, I was writing to Amelia at the beginning of all this. But then I just kept going, and I was like, I felt like I was talking to somebody out there, and in my own mind, I guess, if you will. But I felt like I was talking to somebody, and lo and behold, slowly but surely over time, I think I figured out what God really is. In my life at least, and God is that person that is always there. If you just have a question you want to ask and you want to explore, he, she, they, them, whatever, it doesn't really say much. They just help you to find other questions, and they help you to keep going down whatever road that you want to go down. But they're there to listen is really the point. They're there to help you to explore and help you to navigate this world if you want to have that conversation. And from that, has developed this amazing garden that you and I have been building for the past couple of years, and all the seeds that we've been planting all over the place, and all the stuff that we've been doing, and all this kind of conversations. And it just reminded me of this whole rock pile conversation that I heard on this book from Jim Rohn. We don't do this stuff alone. I mean, I know for a fact, I lived my life separate from any other entity in this world before my daughter. I don't anymore. I really do feel very connected at this point in time to know, and it feels good. It feels reassuring to know that you're not alone, and there's somebody out there to help you. And then the amazing things you guys can do together when you let God have some time in your life every single day and just sit down and think and talk it out. It really can help build a pretty incredible garden. But it's a team. It's a team. Like it's not God, it's not you, it's both. Like you are God, God is you. And all you need to do to unlock that relationship is just ask some questions and think and reflect. So that was it. That was kind of my thought about the rock pile and the relationship between, God and you, and the symbiotic kind of world that you can build together. And it doesn't have to just be all or one or nothing. But yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts.
So I guess the question is, what kind of questions are you asking or was unanswered when you found yourself in the rubble?
Oh, geez, I don't know. I don't even know that I can even think of these things. It was mainly, why? Like, why did this happen? Like, I mean, why? Like, why would you do this to a tiny child? Why would you?
So that's the thing is, like I say, a lot of times we don't value the thing that's most valuable until we are at our lowest,
Right.
right? Because when we think about, an ordinary life versus a life of adventures and whatever that you imagine that kind of life versus a life of peace and quiet, boring. You have that every single day, and everybody yearns for this thrilling kind of moments in their
Right.
life. But the moment when they get into the lowest, this is when they wish to have, a
Someone.
day where it's quiet, where they can do their own thing and be able to hold a thought. A lot
Right.
of time we can't even hold a thought because of all the
Yeah.
external stimuli that bombards us with things. We can't even have a time to even think about what we're thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's is what we just talked about right before this. Anything new, anything good, and then that's worth noting. But the problem is that people don't note this kind of thing until they realize that in the moment when it matters the most, this is when they realize that the thrilling wasn't what they're looking for.
Right.
But I think, everyone has a personal relationship with God, regardless of how
Yeah.
you see it.
It,
Regardless, even
it's always there. Yeah.
if you don't think about it, it's there. And I think when you say you are God and God is you, basically we are interconnected in some
Mm-hmm.
way.
It's
And I
a
think
team sport.
because the thing is, God can't do anything without you, right? So essentially, you're the driver, and God's in the back seat. He can tell you where to go, but he can't drive himself.
Well, actually, I don't think he can. Let's just say God can.
We got into the mysteries of the religion. I mean, the thing is, it's people make up so much stuff today that I'm pretty confused as to
Yeah.
what these things are, and
Hmm.
and people keep saying this and that, and it's a bunch of BS. It's like he, she, they, they, we, whatever. I mean, to me, it got to be one thing, right?
Sure.
God is God. It's not, oh, God is a she, and sometimes God is a he, because he can't. No, he can't. He is
Right.
God, and he is God, right? Because you don't know, just admit you don't know. Just don't say that. And I think people, what I kind of like, grinds my gears. People make up things to explain things they don't understand,
Right.
and they force it on you and say, well, but, you have to accept, because
These are the rules.
this is
Yeah.
this is unknown, therefore you
Right.
have to accept it. And to me, that's a bunch of BS. So that's why, for me, is I don't like organized religion. Organized religion isn't religion. Religion is personally to you, and to
Isn't
the
spiritual. Is
spiritual is
yeah.
between
Yeah.
your soul and the spirit that connects, whatever that spirit, whatever you would call it. And so
Got
it has nothing to do with religion itself. And so
it.
that's why I think a lot of time when people approach the topic of God, it goes into religion. To me,
Right.
God could be some universal being that you connected to,
Right.
part of the commonalities of the way our brain works, basically.
Yeah. Right.
In a way, that could be it. But I can see how we can tunnel our energy to this entity that we call God, to be able to accomplish beyond what we can, on obvious level, can accomplish.
Right.
Because a lot of time I think, the thoughts of thoughts is talking to God. Because I
Mhm.
think when we say, human has the unique ability to think about thoughts,
Right.
right? So animals have brains and they can have thoughts, but to have thoughts about thoughts, that's is something maybe uniquely human. And I think thoughts about thoughts is about its connection with this entity. We call it what you call it. Like, I don't like. I think a lot of people say, well, it's not God, it's this and that. I don't really care. And to me, it's personal to the person, and however you have the relationship with that person, it is what it is. Because in a way, you think about yourself, right? Think of yourself as a TV, but a TV has an antenna, so the signal has to come from somewhere. It
Right.
can't just, right? So that means that you, as a brain, you have this frequency, right? Everything is in frequency. Everything we have is frequency. The way your body is put together is also in frequency, because the frequency, it attracts together, it forms the face, the nose, the head, whatever. It's always frequency. And so your brain is also working frequency, and the frequency is basically picking up the signal from external, and that signal give you this imaginative thought on thoughts, right? So for me, as a TV, when you receive an external stimuli, you can actually process it and turn it into a picture. So imagine yourself as a TV, because you have the brains, and your brain can receive external signals, and that signal could be, weak or strong, depending on how you define it. But
And a signal is just a
because the
pile of rocks.
signal,
Right.
is just a frequency. That frequency, just like a TV, right? It can be tuned to form images and sound. So you think about the external to you, whatever that you do, and when you have thoughts, it actually tune inside of you. It processes signal inside of you to turn you into something different. So, for
Right.
example, when you write about God, when you write about things, and you think
Right about anything. I mean,
how these affects,
anything.
because
Right.
you are essentially taking the external signal and you processing it, and you turn it into, a channel or something to watch, like a picture.
Mhm.
And so I think quite possibly it's there are evidence in terms of in the science field. I mean, science is not. I mean, science far from being able to explain much of anything. I mean, a science is like a maybe a minuscule versions of our attempt to observe the universe,
Right.
right? Because there are, like, I say we are at 1%. I mean, and to be conservative, to
I mean,
be more liberal to
Right,
give
right. I was
you
gonna say,
like,
I mean, probably not. I mean, it's probably,
yeah, maybe
right.
we
Probably
can't
not even
we can't even identify all the animals on planet Earth. And we can't even say, hey, we have identified most of the species
I
on
mean,
planet Earth. So
the
you can't even say, oh, well, I'm gonna go to the moon, I'm going to the galaxies, I'm gonna identify things. See, we probably like maybe I take that back. Maybe we point 0.00001%
right,
of being able to observe anything of any substance, correctness.
right.
Most of the stuff that we have been observed, we have no idea what it is, and
We
we
just stumble
made it
upon
up.
it and try to
And
put
we
a
stumble
specific.
on it, and we don't know what it is, and we made it
Right.
up. It's actually a turtle. You know what I mean?
The book that I'm reading right now is fascinating. It's called The Rise and the Reign of Mammals, and it's fucking awesome. The knowledge, that we don't know anything. We're just guessing a whole lot of things of where we even come from and how we evolved. And this shit has happened over millions of years, and we're literally just grasping at
We
straws.
know that.
Fast,
We don't know.
Right.
I can't remember what I ate yesterday. To
Mhm.
me, I can't remember past month, past year.
Right.
Not to mention, hey, we've been here 2,000 years. I don't know. I was told.
Right. Right.
And so to say we are here for millions of years or billions, I don't know. This is conjectures.
Exactly. Nobody knows. But I think your point is exactly what my thoughts about God these days. It was so confusing for me growing up because God always revolved around organized religion. Like that was like,
Well, God does not revolve around organized religion. Organized religion
No,
uses God.
yes, no. I'm saying my understanding of God growing up was always around organized religion, and it was confusing for me because it was God didn't exist for me. Like it was religion, and then God was a component of like a subcomponent of religion,
Right.
right?
We
Like
live in a religion, and inside the religion there is God, not
exactly,
not the other way
exactly.
around.
Right. My knowledge of God, whatever we want to call that, was disconnected at best because it was like this is a part of something else, and I either have to be fully immersed into
I
that
mean,
to
that's the thing is
experience it
people
or
go to the
not.
church to see
Right.
God. You
That's
see
what
what
I'm
I'm
saying
saying?
is I either
Because
had to be
and people still
all
do.
in. Right. They probably have a really like I mean like what I'm getting at though is like it took me till this atomic bomb event for me to for the first time in my life talk to myself, like, and I don't mean like I never thought through thoughts in my life or anything like that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've always been very, contemplative, but I've never spent time just asking
No, I
questions
don't
about
think you. I don't think you ever think about thoughts. You
no,
have
no,
thoughts. You have thoughts, but you
and
don't
I
think about
process
the
those
thoughts.
thoughts,
Don't
right?
think about that.
Like,
You say, hey,
right.
I thought somebody.
Why did this happen? Like, how can I make this process better or something like that? Like, those
Right.
were my
So
thoughts,
there are
like,
thoughts, but you
it
don't
was
think about the
problem solving.
thought. So
Right,
why
right.
do you think about that?
Mhm.
You don't ask yourself what you think about. You say, hey, this is why did this something happen? Well, you don't ask about why this. You think about why it happened.
I mean, I don't, and
Because we have thought, right? Thought that's to me is tuning to the external signals, right?
right.
Because that is beyond you, beyond your body, able to think of things, right? And so to me, because you understand, hey, there is a TV. There is a TV that's sitting on your counter or whatever. But certainly you plug it into the electricity and you turn the antenna and you tune the frequency, the channels, and
Right.
you have pictures, right? Where does the signal come from? Do you see it?
I didn't choose what came into my orbit. I didn't interpret anything at all. It came into my orbit, and then I may have had thoughts about what came into my orbit, but like I never asked my own questions ever. Like that's really what it boiled down to was I never asked my own questions ever. It was either presented to me, and I was like, oh well, this is your problem. Let me go figure this out, right? Or I
I
just
mean,
didn't
the thing
care.
is,
Like, I never
space
asked my own
between
questions.
stimulus and response is a
Right.
power to choose, and we have never used that power.
Right. I had never asked my own questions in my entire life ever. Like, and this is where the biggest, like, one of the most profound transformations I would say during this whole journey for me has been the idea of like, Jesus Christ, like all you had to do was just stop and talk to yourself for 10 minutes a day. You know what I mean? Like, it's not even like it was some mind-blowing, 5 minutes a day, 1 minute a day, it doesn't matter. Just stop and talk to yourself, like, and ask a question and check in, make sure that you're either going down the right path, and make sure if that doesn't align, then this, whatever this signal is, will help you to ask another question, and it'll help you to ask another question, it'll help you ask another question, and then all of a sudden you find yourself, you know, thousands of questions down the rabbit hole that I don't know where they came from. That's what I'm calling God. That's the joint relationship. I don't know where they came from, but I know that these questions have been leading me down a path where, I call it following my daughter, right? And, chasing her tracks, and things like that. But that's me. Anybody can do what we're talking about. All they have to do is fucking go ask a question and talk to themselves once a day. My whole team, and with all the people that we did in the core values quest, the hardest thing for everybody to do, the hardest thing, what do you think it is? When we ask them to do in the quest, what do you think the hardest thing to do is?
To do nothing?
No, not at all. I'm saying, what do you think the people that struggle with the most out of the stuff that we ask them to do?
Is to think. To me, most people struggle to find who they are and figure out what do they want for themselves.
Agreed, but like, it's the reflective writing. Like, the people are like, I don't even know where to start. The reflective writing is just an output of you asking a question to yourself, right? Like, and then just writing your thoughts, right? Like, it has nothing to do with writing. But people don't know how to ask questions to themselves ever.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing.
It is.
Because it may be simple to do, but it's not easy to do.
It is actually incredibly easy. Just ask any question. Like, I mean, you can start with anything.
The thing is, you don't understand the thoughts about thought. You will never find it, even though it's under your nose. Only until somebody say, well, this thing is a thought. Then
Right.
Eureka, a light bulb shine, in your head. Oh, then it's easy. But without the guidance, without somebody have stumbled on this thing and found this, you could be sitting on it. You could be, chewing on it.
We all
and
are.
you don't even know what it is. You don't realize it. You don't recognize it. So to me, it's hard. And so for people to say, okay, even if you imagine the audience are listening to us right now, we're thinking about thoughts on thought. They're gonna say, "What the fuck are you talking about? What does that mean?"
It's asking a question. It means asking a question about what's going on in your life.
It's not just. Oh, you just think about yourself. But the thing is, there are so much background information between a lot of these things that we say, and so over the years of training, we understand. It makes it easy. For us, for a newborn baby, it's hard until he practiced it. You have to understand it's not easy because you have done this so many times. Even though it is so simple, simple doesn't mean easy because it's not easy to comprehend if there are missing links, missing pieces of information that bridges the understanding.
So here's the most basic example I can think of because it's happening today in real time. I've told you about this new employee that I inherited from another team that is not a cultural fit for anything that we're trying to build with this Club Any Light program. And she's proven it within 2 weeks of me inheriting her as an employee. And I'm adamant that she needs to, and I don't, not because she's a bad person, not because I don't think that she, I started off with belief, I gave her every chance, even within a 2 week period of time. And within that 2 week period of time, she approved, the who she wants to be and how she wants to go forward. And it's an exact opposite of what I'm trying to do with her within the first 2 weeks. I mean, I can document it. At a certain point in time, you go, can she change? Of course she can change. Like, everybody can change, but like, will she? I don't know. I doubt it. And I don't want to really invest my time into doing that. She can figure that out on her own time, right? Now, this is where it comes into this conversation. I'm trying to explain this to other people within my organization going, I know exactly why we're here, what I'm trying to build. And I know exactly why she's not a fit for this and why she needs to not be a part of this organization at all. I mean, honestly, to be frank, she just needs to not be a part of the organization for both of us, for herself and for us, or for me and my team and the other people that we work with, because she's not a fit for that world. And it can't be fun for her either, like, and it's not fun for anybody else. And it's not alignment, right? Now, where I'm going with all this is like my head, like, I've been trying to convince many other people that sharing these facts, like this should be the outcome. And for whatever weird reason, people are not agreeing with me. And I know that, not weird reasons. I know why this is not being like fully accepted immediately, going, yes, you're right, let's just make a clean break. Like I actually know why, and I'm not going to get into the specifics of all that, but it's irrelevant. My point of what I'm getting at ultimately here is I've thought a lot about this. Right? Like, but I haven't thought a lot about thoughts about this. Meaning, I haven't stopped back and say, why do I even care? Like, why do I give a shit? Like, I'm still doing what I'm doing, and I'm fine with that. If she's not, if I can, if technically she's no longer my problem at this point in time, because I was at least successfully able to pawn this off onto another thing, or onto another entity within the organization, and I can go back to focusing on whatever I want to focus on. But the thing is, what I'm getting at is, like, I could have spent the next month of my life just fixated on trying to solve this problem that was put in front of me and thought a lot about it, but then never thought about that thought, of going, why should I care? Why does this align to what I want to be in my life? Does this matter to my values? What is it about this particular situation that is troubling me so much? And the reason why I'm giving this example overall is that is what most people do. They think that they're thinking about something hard. Yes, and they are. They're thinking about it a lot, and they're trying to problem solve through it a lot, but they're not stopping to think about the thought. And those additional questions are when you find this connective layer that has nothing to do with the stimulus that's being thrown into you in front of your face. This is a higher connective layer that has nothing to do, that is your connective layer, and that is the God connective layer up there, right? When you start to ask the question about what you're asking questions about, or what you're trying to problem solve about. Does that make sense, what I was trying to say?
It makes sense, but like I say, it makes sense to me, it makes sense to you.
Right.
But I'm pretty sure this makes sense to people who doesn't have the understanding yet. Because
that's true. Yeah.
because the thing is, I ask you again, when you first started meditations, what do you think?
It was awful. It was stupid.
Exactly.
It was doing, like, yeah. What am I
supposed
doing?
to think about? What am I supposed to think about? You don't know, even though meditation is the easiest thing.
It is easy. It's just sit there.
But it was hard, right? So that's my point. It's easy and it's simple once you understand it. But until you understand it, it's hard, because without somebody guiding you through, say, hey, Chris, meditation is like this. Okay, right. Just do this. Just listen to your thoughts. Just feel, whatever. Then oh, okay. Then it's easy once you have that. But you by yourself, you would need to go to the mountain and do random experiment until you stumble on, oh, this is what I need to do to meditate. You're going to take you 100 years to do that. That's what I'm saying. It's hard because by yourself, there is very slim chance that you can find it on your own. So to me, having the thoughts needs practice. Because the thing is,
yeah, I agree.
It's not about asking why do I feel, why does this person does this? Why do I have to take her in? Why do I have to? You are thinking in the first person. But if you say, I'm going to take it and think in a third person, I am another person outside. I'm a Chris outer ego looking at Chris, seeing Chris, thinking why I have to take this person. That is thoughts about thoughts. Thoughts about thought is another person, a projection that looks at you. You as if you separate, you're so separate yourself. And look back at your physical body and seeing you struggle and basically that's thought on thought.
What are you doing? It's like, what are you like? It's a referee.
But that's the thing is only then. Why does it matter to you?
It doesn't. Like, I don't care. Like, I mean, this.
But that's the thing is only when you are able to take your soul, outer ego, take it out of yourself, and from that perspective, a third person perspective, looking back at the Chris and his problem and his thought about, why doesn't she,
see this? Why does exactly?
Because your perspective as the Chris, that's the question that's a thought you have.
Right.
But as the guy who's outside of Chris, looking at Chris, thinking, why is Chris thinking about that?
Right.
That is what we call the thoughts on thoughts. And so for us to experience that first, then for us to explain it in a way that may bridge the understanding. And then people can say, well, maybe I can do this. And essentially, if I can see any eureka moments in terms of, I feel like what I'm focusing on wasn't important to me. Because
Yeah.
let's say I'm chasing some kind of dream, some kind of goal to become, the best, the longest hair guy or the longest nail
Right.
guy or the best drinker or the best smoker, whatever that I'm trying to go. When I have thoughts on that, I said, well, that isn't what I want.
Don't want a culture that's for everybody. Like, I mean, we've talked about this. If anything, this is a good thing, and we're both like, well, okay, like as long as I don't have to deal with this shit. Like, I mean, I mean, hell, like if this was my own, if this was company, like I would have said, hey guys, for whatever weird reason, we signed these lifetime contracts. We let her in. That's our fault, but I'm gonna make it clear, like she doesn't want to be involved in anything that we want to be involved in, and please don't include her unless she decides she wants to be included, or something along those lines. Otherwise, we're going to proceed forward with the rest of the ecosystem. Fine, she can keep getting a paycheck. I don't care about money. This isn't about money. This is about us all going forward in a purpose and mission. I wouldn't have ever got to that point unless it was really zooming out to go, this is, and asking. This example is a more technical, involved example where we could go around and around. There's a ton of different paths you go down. You could do this on a most basic, easy level every single day by just literally asking your own self a question and then asking a question about that question. Okay, here's the answer. This is what I do every day. I read a daily Stoic or something like that, or my Marianne Williamson, A Year of Miracles, or my 366 Days of Tennis, or my Trusting God Day by Day, or my Japanese death poems, like whatever. I read one of these every single day and I get somebody else's thought and a question from them. And then I go, what are my thoughts about that? And then that's when God and I have a fun conversation.
It's still not a thought about your thought. It's a thought about somebody else's thought.
I said, and then once I'm in that metaverse of thinking a little bit higher, then all of a sudden my own thoughts start to simulate from that. And then we start to have questions about things that are completely outside of that. I'm just saying that's like my warm up to how do I get there quickly. If you're asking me, how do I jump into that world fast?
I think people still need to understand, because right now there are two different layers that you have to disconnect. The first layer is you believe in God in the traditional sense. You have to let go of that first before you can even understand the next one. The next one is the God. We are basically redefining what God is and how he operates.
I don't actually know that we are. I think that that's what it's always been. I just
think
that
we're defining based on our belief of how God exists in our lives.
I agree with that, but I also think that there's plenty of people that do understand this and have defined it that way. It's just that we're defining for ourselves. Organized religion.
Ultimately, that's what it is. I mean, it doesn't matter what anyone else is thinking. It's only matter what you think, what I think,
yeah,
right? Because any religion, any
God is always individualistic.
It's personal. Yeah, it's very personable, right? It has nothing to do with church or any kind of organization.
Anyone. It has nothing to do with anybody.
But honestly, that's like people are conditioned to follow an organization, not follow their own belief, because you can't believe it that way. That's how you go to church and you say, I believe God does this. They say, no, that's not how God works. Because if I say, if I tell you, Chris, God made me do these great things, it's all God. And then I go and I say, well, God made me do these awful things. No, you did it, not God. God did the good thing, you did the bad thing. So how do you tell the difference? Because the thing is, it's like you only take whatever fits you. That's organized religion. That's what they say. God make all these beautiful things. You sin. Oh, it's your fault. It's not God's fault. He didn't control you.
It's the devil's fault. It's actually not even your fault.
Either God controls me or he doesn't. Or there's some kind of medium between the two when we sit in a rock pile.
None of it makes sense necessarily.
It doesn't make sense, but the thing is, it's only makes sense if you believe it.
Right. Even what we're describing may not make sense. And that's okay. But it's really, I think what we're getting at the core of all this is you and God are a team. Like whatever your God
because what I can tell you, what I know, based on some evidence, that there are other signals other than just you.
For sure.
That's what I can tell you with some evidence, because like TV has its own thing, it probably can turn its own picture. But when you plug in an antenna and you turn to a certain frequency, that frequency signal is being processed into a different image. You see what I'm saying? Because to me, is entire. We're not self-contained. Like we receive signal from someone else. So whatever that else, you can call it whatever. You can call it God, whatever. But you are receiving external signal, external frequency into your brain. from an
It's just
external. It's not
that's
produced
just
by
the
thing. Is
universe.
that
Yeah. God
have
helps us to
some
make sense of the
support?
like that's what God does. It helps us to make sense of the universe.
I don't even know that.
No, no, your own universe. Like your universe. Like not the universe. I'm saying God takes, in my opinion, helps us
But
to
you are
dissect
God and God
universal.
you. So
Right. Well, no, but you're not. You're it's two different. It's two different. You're two different entities. Like
I don't know that.
he can't exist, or
I don't know that.
God can't exist without you, and you can't exist without God. Like that's
You are
not
God
possible.
and God you. I mean, this is why you have
But there's
the
two different
external.
things. Like there
How's it a
your
different thing?
thoughts. Your
But
your
the thing
your
is,
thoughts
that's what I'm saying
thoughts aren't
is
you.
these things are not so black and white that you can say, well, God and you are two different entity. Whatever.
This is a really interesting conversation actually because it's
This is a whole university topic that can be
oh for sure. I mean
debated
we
for centuries.
well
And
it has
so
been
so
debated
but the
for
thing is, in essence, we are redefining what God is to us. To me,
and neither one
God
of us are
is
wrong.
this external stimuli that I don't know, that's not me. That is more than me, but it's also me in a way. That's how I see it. So I don't know what God, quote unquote, what God is or what. I'm just saying, hey, there is something that is outside of my own containment of this body. And I can receive signals, and I was able to process these signals, whether it come from the God or maybe God is the universal brainwaves of everybody on earth. Maybe that could be it. That could be one explanation, but no one knows. But as
Right.
far as God can do, like, hey, God is all powerful and He can do anything, then there's some logic that doesn't make sense. Because, for example, I just show you, everything good in your life, God did it for you. Then everything you did bad, God is also responsible. You can't just say, well, God is responsible for good, and then when the moment that something is bad, God wasn't there. So that doesn't make sense. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's
So it isn't consistent.
the God that we're talking about is always there, like and it's there for everybody.
The
It's
signal on the
universal,
TV
right?
is always on. You just
Right,
the TV can be turned off, but the signal does not mean it stopped because
right. It's
constantly, right, it's always there. But the moment you turn on the TV, you open the TV to receive the signal and process signal. But when you turn off
right,
the TV, it stops processing, but the signal still comes.
and that's the sad thing is a lot of us operate on autopilot all day long. Is kind of the gist of what we're doing.
Just turn off the TV.
We don't. I don't even know that we even know there's a TV in that room.
Imagine that you are the TV,
Oh no, no, I know,
but you
I
turn
know.
off yourself.
Your elephant is on autopilot all day long, and yes, every once in a while there may be a rider that pops in, but like the rider is what I was describing initially about the problem I was talking about. The third element is something above both of them that's like, hey, like I'm not here to tell anybody what to do, but like you guys can talk through me if you want and connect yourselves a little bit better. If you want me to give you maybe some questions that you know or a different level of understanding as we're talking here that you guys can connect together. You know what I mean? It's like almost like the guy at the bar that's a quiet dude in the corner or whatever that just watches everybody all night long, and you just go over there and you tell him how your night went. And he's like, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you just keep talking before you know it, it's like 3 a.m. in the morning or whatever. And you're like, ah, all right, I feel like I understand now. You go home and you feel happy, even though the whole night long was just total shit show and your elephant was just doing crazy shit all night long. They didn't say, God didn't say anything to you, but you just spent some time sitting down going, what was that night like? Talking.
I think that there is more to God and how God can help you if you know how to properly align yourself. Because you can say, well, I can talk to myself, all that, and maybe I can stumble on some other thought that I haven't think about yet. And yeah, talking to yourself can uncover some of the hidden things you haven't seen. But to think about your life as a third person, this is phenomenally different, phenomenally more impactful than anything you would imagine. Just like when I asked you, what do you think about when you meditate? In the beginning, you have no idea what you're doing, and you don't know if it's even working. But eventually, you figured out, and people meditate more and more. I mean, the people that meditate knows what I'm talking about, because once they figured out how to meditate, it is immensely impactful that have changed the way they live.
Well, I agree with 1,000% with what you just said. I would challenge one point of like when you say figure it out. Like I don't know that any of us figure it out. I think that's the point is we figure out that we didn't figure it out. You know what I mean? Like there is no answers, but it's just fun just asking more questions. You
When
know,
you say figure it out, it's not like it's an answer as a black or white or anything like that.
that's what
It's
I meant. Like
always a
it's
progressing scale. You know, you say,
right,
well,
right.
I understand a little bit more. I've seen some evidence to back up some more,
You've
and
you've progressed forward.
eventually, yeah, you're basically progressing more than before.
Right.
So that's what I mean by
That's fair.
figuring out. But figuring out is not because in the wicked world, in the wicked environment, the dynamic world, there's no such thing as 0 and 1.
Yeah.
Isn't
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
black and white. It's the gray area, and there could be billions of gray shades in
Mhm.
between. And so progression is the same thing because at some point, where you say, "Well, I believe this way," and there's some evidence that's supporting what I believe, but eventually some evidence may contradicts it, and eventually maybe let's say I have 10 evidence that supports what I was thinking, and then maybe one evidence that contradicts it. But it's still not enough for me to change my ways until there
Right.
are like 20 evidence that contradicts it and only 11 evidence that supports it. Then that's why I'm changing to veer to a different path. But that's the thing is the only way we know is as we collect more evidence, more data points, we make decisions on that particular set of data.
And
Because
we
right
talk
now,
about it.
the only thing you know is this is what I know. So you can tell me that, hey, I only know that I am me, and me has able to have thoughts that is beyond this particular vessel.
Right. I actually
Okay.
write about it like I'm a third person, like mediating between my elephant and my writer, you know, and
Yes.
I mean, seriously, I'm like, guys, come on.
Yes. That's just when you're playing the tennis, right?
Right, right. Yeah.
Right. You say, hey, guys, you need to stop it because so that essentially is trying to personify this signal,
Right.
personify as God and talking to that person and talking to God. That could be, the God that you're speaking to, as far as I know.
I agree.
Beyond that, I don't know anymore.
Yeah.
That belief could be changed, and I'm open to changing it. But I know that this is what I see, and I know that whatever organized religion gives me, it contradicts a lot of stuff that I'm thinking about. Because, like I say, if God is involved in making all the good things in your life, He's also going to be responsible for the bad thing you did.
That was actually the question that got me started on my relationship with God. And actually, like, I want to wrap this one up with this thought for me, at least, I guess, is like a final thought. Going back to the whole rock pile.
This is beyond our understanding.
That was insane. Oh, I remember what I was gonna say. When was the answer to my own question of when was the last question? What was the last question that you and Guy collaborated on together? And this is when it gets super fun. Is when you have a more beautiful question, right? Because like I talk all the time about clubbing with God, right? And with you as well. Like we ask a lot of questions about this stuff and we continue to explore. When you have a beautiful question that just captivates you and you can talk to God every night at whatever venue you want to talk to about, you know, with all different kinds of sources that are giving you more inspiration about it, like that's when it becomes your rock pile. That's when your rock pile, that you can see rocks all over the place, right? Like you could walk down anywhere and see rocks everywhere, but then you're like, oh, this rock pile for whatever reason appeals to me and I'm going to make it into a fucking garden, right? Like that's your beautiful question that you stumble upon. And that's when, you know, like it's not hard at all to talk to God about anything. You can ask a lot of questions, but then you find that beautiful question, you can talk all day about it, you know.
Right. And so one of the things that comes to my mind is that, when you talk to God, right, some people can talk to God for hours. Some people only talk for like a few seconds. What I'm saying is, what's the difference?
Nothing, as long as you're talking. Like in my opinion.
Well, you can try.
Right. As long as you're trying.
That's what I'm saying is I think there is a difference between talking to God, right? And then also because like to understand how you talk to God is when your mind is able to engage. Because if you can't engage your brain into projecting that third person to reflect and look at yourself as from another third person perspective, you can't hold that thought about thought.
Oh, I mean, I
And
agree.
so that means that if you can't engage in that conversation, the conversation with quote unquote God, it's very short.
Mhm.
But if you can hold the thought as that person, hey, look at that guy. He's thinking about that. He's doing this thing, well, he shouldn't be doing that, or whatever. Then you're able to hold a long conversation, and you can maybe hold it more frequent.
What do you think all this is? This is an hour-long conversation that we had every single day that I write. This is a very detailed exploration of a thought and a question, and we're writing it out and figuring it out together. Like, I mean, this is exactly what your magical learning is. Like, to your exact point, the longer that I talk, the more that we learn, the more that I can come away with a nugget of like, oh, okay, this is how I can go help my rider and my elephant connect the dots a little bit together, and we can keep moving, And then you and I talk about it, and we have a more in-depth conversation about it even more, and we explore it even further, and we further refine that, I guess. But like at the end of the day, like that is the power of writing to me. That is exactly what the fucking power of writing is because it's an extended conversation with God. It slows it down. It makes you think. It keeps it going. And it like because you could sit there and talk. Like, so I'm sure that people that meditate, like in the traditional sense of, sitting there going on, and whatever, and like their legs crossed and they're in a,
That's not meditation.
No, I know. It is, but it's not. Like, I mean, I guess what I was trying to say is like that there are people that can do that and can have this conversation.
Chanting. That's chanting.
All right, you get my point. What I'm trying to say is that they can have this conversation in their head and take a point away and apply it, and they want to move forward. For me, it's right.
But that's what I'm saying is there's a big difference between a person can talk to God and write the whole, I don't know how many words that it is.
It's probably 800. I can tell you. What was this one? 225. Oops.
But essentially, that is still much more than people can think about thoughts on thoughts, because that's what I'm saying is thought on thought is very rare in my experience, because through my life, I don't ask the questions, and it's not that often that I am able to consciously go into the thought on thoughts, right?
And yeah.
The problem is that, we always get immersed in our daily life, and the first perspective thought is overwhelming, and the brain just, trying to process all that. And so to even stop your first thought perspective for a second, it's hard. So it takes practice. It takes practice for that to be done. That's what I'm saying is you and I can walk pretty easily, but for a baby who hasn't walked before, it's difficult.
This is what I said to you earlier in the conversation. The hardest thing everybody has, that everybody struggles, it's universal. It is across the board universal. This is the hardest thing that I ever ask anybody to do when they go through the quest, is spending time thinking and reflecting and writing out their thoughts. It's the hardest thing that they do, like by far. I mean, you could say somebody goes,
it's because they don't have practice. For one, like they don't write the thought, because thoughts are thoughts. They're not words. You know what I mean? We don't think in words. And so it takes another translator to translate the thoughts into words. That's difficult too if you don't have experience writing. That's why for me to write isn't very, I don't write, but if you ask me a question, like, discussing, I can talk to you for hours, whatever it is, there's always thought, and I can try to best kind of explain what I see in a way that, that I think is representations of what I'm thinking. But that's the thing is when you think about something, doesn't mean that, hey, it translates into this, and you can just say it's automatic.
Totally. I mean, you and I having a conversation is so different than I and I having a conversation. Like, I and I having a conversation comes up with this thing, right? Like, and now you and I have a conversation, we can talk about it, we can go explore it further. But like, I don't know what true would say about this exact same conversation.
Right, because you imagine me and you talking to each other, but we also know what the other person's as well. That's when you have this thought on thought.
Exactly. Like,
it's confusing because I keep saying thoughts on thought. It's like, you sound like a Buddhist.
Yeah, the self and not self or whatever. I mean,
yes.
It's we're not going to go down that road. All right, it's kind of funny you say that, because that is what we've joked about, of living too high in the mountains all the time. To be fair, you cannot have thoughts on thoughts all day long. Like, you got to get down in the valley floor and mix the shit up.
So I mean, like we say in many other episodes, is there's always got to be a balance. The right amount for each individual. There's got to be the right amount for that person. But I'm saying is in today's world, the amount on the time spent on thought is near zero.
I would challenge. I would be shocked if you just interviewed 1,000 people on the street and you asked them how much time do you spend in reflection every single day. I'd be shocked if more than 10 out of 1,000 people that you just randomly sampled on the street said they spent more than zero on reflection. Now, the people that do reflect, maybe they spend an hour or something like that, or really do meditate or whatever. That may skew the averages where it comes out to like 5 minutes of a person or something like that. But my point is, I bet you money that it's like, what do you think? 10 out of 1,000, maybe, of people in this world? You think it's less than that?
You're probably lucky if you come one. Yeah, you found 1 in 1,000. They could probably say they do, but I guarantee you they don't. Like I say, for you, Chris, you have written how many? 355 reflections? That means you talk to God 355 times at least.
Well, no,
right?
I've done actually way more than that.
I say at least.
I'm on day 1,120. That's how many days in a row it's been,
Right. That's my point is still the same. You have done that many reflection, quote unquote, thoughts on thoughts.
Right.
Now, let me ask you the same, Chris. Before your atomic bomb, how many of that did you do? I bet you it's about zero.
I mean, honestly, I have to say zero because
you're the same guy.
Yeah,
I'm just saying you're the same guy. So yep. That's what I'm saying. It takes training. It takes tremendous training. And the only reason why you started this journey is because you had to. Okay?
Right. I was forced.
Forces you to do it. That's why I say if you found somebody that is in that 1,000, like that is, doing the reflection, you probably win the lottery.
Man, all right, I got to show you this now. And I know this is what happens when you and I keep talking. All right, so I just wrote this is my reflection from yesterday. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It was from this book called The Art of Living. This is the question I started off with. What's the difference between Elon Musk and a homeless person you see on a street corner begging for a change in 10-degree weather as you stroll by in your car? What do you think the difference is?
Mindset.
Think of how hard it is to get up every single day, to endure, to persist, grit, and humiliate yourself, embarrass yourself, and humble yourself, to walk out on that street corner every single day and have to be subjected to that ridicule and that environment, no bathroom, no whatever. I mean, you couldn't pay me like, $200 a day to go do that in 10-degree weather standing on a street corner. I mean, you couldn't pay me. And these people do this to try to get money, from somebody else, right? So it's not mindset, because those same intangibles, I guarantee you, are the same intangibles you would describe, some billionaire with grit, determination, persistence, where their adaptability, humility, like, you know what I mean?
It's still the mindset. Regardless of what you say, it's still mindset, because
no.
Okay. Well, you tell me.
It is understanding of the mindset. It is Elon Musk has spent time thinking about what he's trying to actively do, and thoughts about thoughts, to get to where he is, to channeling it into a particular direction. The homeless person is just aimlessly, deploying.
Well, homeless guy has no mindset.
It's not a mindset.
The mindset is still there, but it's a different set of mind, different mindset, different sets of minds, right?
The intangibles are there in both. Like the same ingredients are there in both. With 1,000, actually, if anything,
the thing is, basically, you say, well, I have this, I don't know, something precious, like, this magical crystal ball, right? The intangibles are there, but the one in Elon's pocket is whole. The one in the homeless guy, it's shattered.
Exactly.
It's intangible still there, but it's not the same.
How did it get to be whole?
Because it gets to be whole because there is some other mindset that holds it together, basically glued together. So mindset contains mindset. You understand?
or God.
So,
This is why the reason why I bring this up is because it's a
well,
God conversation
you're
about thoughts about.
confusing people when you say God, because, like I said, people are used to the word God as some omnipotent entity somewhere in the
Elon
realm of
Musk
what we're
has Elon
talking
has
about.
talked to
God is
himself.
something else.
Elon has talked to himself every single day for a really long time. I could guarantee you that. It's his relationship with God, and then he turned that rock pile into the beautiful gardens that we all see.
But he doesn't go
But
to church.
you don't have to go to church to talk to God.
But that's my point. Is
Right. Yeah, I
but
mean, I agree.
it's a mindset. The mindset means, because the mindset is like, what is it in your mind toolbox that makes the difference? It isn't like, hey, just like, for example, I know how to use Word. I understand the words, right? And that doesn't make me a great writer,
Same thing with all
because
the
it's the
ingredients to be a
ensemble.
good chef.
It's
We
an
all have the same
ensemble.
ingredients.
Same thing with ingredient. You can give me the same steak, the same, salt, ingredients, condiments, whatever. That doesn't mean that I can cook a good steak. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's not just the ingredient. You say the intangibles, right? The know-how, the ratio is also intangible. So I'm saying it's still part of the mindset, meaning the ability for a chef to orchestrate this ratio mixture of an ingredients to, you know, bring out the best of the taste buds. Same thing with the book. There are words. I know all the words, but why can't I produce a book in a pattern that can elicit emotions from people who reads it?
Funny. It's
So
funny
I
you say
have
that.
to have the intention. I have the ability to pen the word. I have the ability to understand each word, but the ensemble of it escapes me. So you have a crystal ball, right? It is completely whole because you have the ability, extra mindset to kind of hold it together in a crystal ball. The homeless guy, he has all the pieces of the glasses, but it's all shattered. It's everywhere. It is not an organized of any patterns or sort of resemblance of anything usable. That's a different mindset.
I agree. I'm going to say that one quick challenge to that of, it's funny you say the word mindset, meaning it's congealed, it's set, right? Like it is what it is.
No, mindset is not a solidify of any
well, hang on.
intangibles.
So I was going to
It
say,
is an example of many things. It's called a set.
I was going to say it's mind exploration is what it is, because that's what it is.
Well, it doesn't make sense to me because a set is like, hey, I have a tool set, right? It's not, hey, my tool is solidified together.
But that's what mindset means. Like
the way that I see mindset is the ability to have so many different type of intangible inside of my box. Inside my box, there's so many tools that I can use, so many mindset, too many like ideal concepts and construct.
It's a paradigm
Into something solid. That's not what I mean.
That's what I interpret that word to be. But that's okay. We can either way. I think we both agree in general of what the difference is between the two, because the intangibles are there for both. Is kind of what we were both getting at.
No, some of the intangibles are there, but not all of the intangibles. They're not equal because Elon has more intangibles than the homeless guy.
Not intangible. No, like
the pieces of glass, the pieces of glasses, the piece of glass that it makes up crystal ball is there.
That's what I mean.
But Elon has another set of tool that able to hold the crystal ball in a spherical shape.
Oh yeah, no, I mean I agree.
That's a different tool. So let's say the guy has like, okay, I have all the ingredients, but I haven't put it together, haven't cooked. Just like I have all the words, but doesn't mean I have a book because I haven't put the word together in the right patterns to make anything. And that's like 1% versus 100%. I can look up the dictionary for most of the word. I can use it, but I don't know how to put it together. Just like I go to the piano, I can press any keys. I have the ability to press any keys I want. I have the intangibles. I have the skills, the muscle. I can press any keys. But the guy who plays a beautiful song has something I don't. And that's also intangibles.
Yeah, I mean, it probably they talk to God. They got a relationship with God, is what it is. All right, I officially have to go to bed. It is officially late, and I need to. And my brain is about my
That's
thoughts.
why we need to have a reflection that is particular to some point, because otherwise it's an open discussion.
Right, right, exactly. Well, that was fun as hell. Always. Thank you for joining. And the question we can leave with everybody is, what was the last question that you and God collaborated on together? And if it's been a while, then you should probably start now, today, right now.
It's like most people are like, this.
Right. Then, yeah, that's all I can say. All right. Well, thanks for joining, and we will see you all
Monday. Sounds good. See ya.